Is this trash-picking rat really trying to block my VIP marina resort? Pour the gas. Burn this filthy swamp to the ground. The site contractor's voice sliced through the howling wind, harsh and completely devoid of any human empathy. A lit match flicked through the torrential rain, igniting a line of diesel that instantly erupted into a wall of fire, hissing violently against the wet mud. Maya didn't even scream. She just threw herself directly over the fragile mangrove saplings, using her own trembling back as a human shield against the scorching heat and the choking black smoke. But before the flames could consume her, a broad-shouldered man in a soaked, unassuming jacket lunged into the inferno. He didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around her, shielding her in the tiny green shoots from the raging storm and the brutal fire with absolute certainty. Hello, everyone. The vast ocean of justice always has enough grace to nurture brave hearts who protect the green, clean earth. If you believe in doing what is right, please leave a prayer in the comments below. I believe the ocean of justice always washes away all injustice and brings peace to the righteous. And make sure to hit that subscribe button right now to support the truth. To understand how we got to this terrifying moment, we have to rewind exactly 4 days. Maya lived a life most people would find completely unbearable. Yet she wore it with a quiet, unbreakable smile every single morning. Long before the sun even thought about rising, she was already out on the cold water. She maneuvered her small, weathered basket boat through the tangled roots of the coastal mangroves, her callous hands pulling heavy, waterlogged trash from the delicate ecosystem. She wasn't just a scavenger. She was a guardian. With whatever pennies she made from recycling, scrap metal, and plastic bottles, she bought expensive medicine for her bedridden mother and seeds to replant the dying mangrove forest. She cultivated natural shrimp and fish, coaxing life back into a bay that the modern world had almost choked to death. She never complained. She always believed that if you talk the talk, you walk the walk. Failure just wasn't a word in her vocabulary. Then came the storm. It was a freak squall that hit the coast without any warning, turning the sky a bruised, angry purple. Maya was tying down her small wooden dock when she heard the faint, panic cries over the crashing waves. Out in the churning gray water, a small rented dinghy was capsizing. Without a second thought, Maya grabbed her wooden oars and rowed her unstable basket boat directly into the teeth of the gale. The waves were massive, threatening to flip her over at any second. But her focus was razor sharp. Inside the sinking dinghy was Henry, a single father who had just wanted to take his little girl on a simple nature trip, and his terrified 7-year-old daughter, Lily. The waves were smashing against them, threatening to pull the child under the freezing water. Maya reached them just as the back of the boat went under. She hauled Lily into her basket boat, wrapping the freezing, sobbing girl in her own dry flannel shirt, soothing her with a gentle, steady voice. "I got you, sweetie. The ocean is just throwing a little tantrum, but we are perfectly safe." She then reached out and hauled Henry aboard. He was breathless, his clothes torn. But as he held his daughter tight, his sharp, dark eyes locked onto Maya. He didn't say a word of thanks right then, but the quiet intensity in his gaze spoke volumes. He saw not just a rescuer, but a soul of pure light. Maya brought them back to her modest, drafty shack by the edge of the swamp. She brewed them hot ginger tea on a small camping stove and gave them the last of her dry, patched blankets. Henry watched her as she moved around the cramped space, gently tending to her sick mother in the corner, while making sure Lily was warm and distracted with a handmade wooden toy. He noticed her raw, blistered hands and the dozens of glass jars containing mangrove seedlings lining the windowsill. He asked her, his voice low and raspy from the salt water, why she lived like this when she could easily move to the city and find an easier job. Maya just smiled, a bright, genuine smile that reached her tired eyes. Because someone has to protect the nursery. If the roots die, the sea dies. And if the sea dies, we all do. But the profound peace of that morning was violently shattered the very next day. A fleet of heavy black SUVs and massive yellow machinery rolled into the muddy clearing near Maya's home, crushing the delicate grass tracks. Men in sharp, expensive suits and steel-toed boots stepped out, led by a ruthless, arrogant contractor named Vance. They represented a massive, shadowy development firm looking to pave over the entire bay for a private, ultra-luxury marina resort. Vance looked around at the humble shack, the carefully nurtured saplings, and Maya's muddy boots with absolute disgust. He pulled out a handkerchief, pressing it to his nose, as if the very air around her was toxic. "Listen up, sweetheart," Vance sneered, tossing a crumpled legal contract onto the wet ground right at her feet. "We own the zoning rights now. Here is a couple of $1,000. Take your sick mother and your little weeds and get out of my sight. We are dredging this entire swamp by Friday." Maya didn't even look at the money. She stood her ground, her small frame dwarfed by the heavy machinery idling loudly behind him. This land is a protected ecological zone. You cannot just buy it and destroy it. These mangroves are the only thing stopping the coastal erosion and providing a breeding ground for the marine life. Vance laughed, a harsh grating sound that echoed over the mud flats. "Ecological zone? I see a garbage dump run by a beggar. You think your little trash boat is going to stop my excavators? You are nothing. Nobody cares about a few stupid trees or some fish." Maya refused to back down. She spent the next 2 days standing directly in front of the bulldozers, refusing to move an inch. She was completely alone. The local authorities turned a blind eye, their pockets likely lined by the developers' deep pockets. Vance's men started getting physical. They deliberately threw her gardening tools into the deep water. They kicked over her carefully raised fish nurseries, laughing as the fry washed away in the mud. And through it all, Henry and little Lily were staying at a small motel in the nearby town, waiting for their rental car to be repaired. But Henry wasn't just waiting, he was watching. He stood near the tree line, hidden by the dense foliage. His jaw clenched so tight, a muscle ticked rapidly in his cheek. When he saw one of the workers violently shove Maya into the mud, causing her to scrape her knees raw, he immediately covered his daughter's eyes. His entire demeanor shifted. The quiet, helpless father from the storm vanished completely. He pulled out a sleek, highly encrypted satellite phone and dialed a single, secure number. "It is me," he said, his voice cold as absolute ice. "I need the acquisition team now. Bring everyone." Right at this very moment, as Maya stands completely alone against the violent machinery of greed and power, she desperately needs our collective strength. Please leave a comment right now. I believe the ocean of justice always washes away all injustice and brings peace to the righteous. Let your prayer give her the power to hold the line. The roar of the bulldozer engine revved higher, violently shaking the muddy ground beneath them. Vance had lost whatever tiny bit of patience he had left. He threw his umbrella to the side, letting the heavy rain soak his expensive suit. "Enough of this pathetic circus! Dump the defoliant into those breeding pools right now. Let's see her protect dead fish." A heavy-set worker grabbed a large, rust-stained industrial barrel of toxic chemical weed killer from the back of the truck. He dragged it toward the edge of the water, where Maya's carefully cultivated shrimp and fish nurseries lay. Maya scrambled up, completely ignoring the bleeding raw scrapes on her knees, and threw her frail body directly at the man. "No, you can't do this. You'll poison the entire water table for decades." She grappled with the worker's thick arm, desperately trying to pry his fingers off the barrel, but he was twice her size and entirely devoid of conscience. With a brutal backhanded shove, he threw her backward. Maya fell hard, crashing into the deep, churning mud, the breath completely knocked out of her lungs. Before the worker could tilt the toxic barrel into the pristine water, a heavy leather boot stepped firmly onto the rim of the barrel, stopping it dead. It wasn't the local police. It was Henry. He didn't yell. He didn't throw a wild punch. He simply stood there, his wet, unassuming jacket clinging to his broad shoulders, radiating a terrifying absolute authority that made the burly worker instinctively freeze and step back. Vance scoffed, stepping down from his dry vantage point, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. And who the hell is this supposed to be? The swamp rat's homeless boyfriend? Get out of the way, buddy, before I have my guys bury you under the pier along with her little weeds. Henry slowly reached into his soaked pocket. He pulled out a pair of shattered, salt-stained safety goggles, the ones Vance's men had crushed under their boots earlier that morning, and tossed them directly at Vance's feet. I gave you 3 days to reconsider your zoning permits, Vance. I thought maybe, just maybe, your firm had an ounce of basic human decency. I was wrong. My firm? You don't even know who you're talking to. You washed up loser. Vance spat, his face turning red with insulted fury. He signaled his men, grab them, throw them both in the water. But before a single thug could take a step forward, the low, rhythmic, thunderous thumping of heavy rotor blades echoed across the bay, completely drowning out the storm. It wasn't just one helicopter. 3 massive, matte black corporate choppers cut through the angry sky, hovering directly over the clearing. The immense downwash sent Vance's men scrambling for cover, knocking over their heavy equipment and blowing the toxic barrels safely away from the water. Emblazoned on the side of the lead chopper was a striking silver logo that everyone in the global shipping industry feared and respected, the Pacific Continental Logistics Group. Simultaneously, a fleet of sleek black SUVs tore through the mud tracks, aggressively blocking the only exit to the highway. A dozen men in sharp suits, accompanied by heavily armed federal conservation marshals, swarmed the site. The lead attorney, holding a thick leather briefcase, jogged straight through the mud toward Henry, completely ignoring the chaos, and respectfully bowed his head. Mr. Sterling, the emergency acquisition of the bay is complete. We have the federal warrant, sir. Vance's smug, arrogant face completely drained of blood, turning a sickly shade of gray. His knees literally buckled as his terrified eyes darted from the elite attorney to the quiet, unassuming father standing in the mud. Henry Sterling, the billionaire tycoon who single-handedly controlled half the commercial shipping lanes on the West Coast, and the notorious, uncompromising chairman of the Pacific Marine Conservation Fund. When the blinding light of true justice shatters the arrogance of the cruel, we all feel a profound, healing sense of relief. If you are cheering for this massive turning point, let's flood the comments right now. I believe the ocean of justice always washes away all injustice and brings peace to the righteous. Mr. Sterling, Vance stammered, his voice cracking into a pathetic, high-pitched whine as he backed away. There's been a massive misunderstanding. We didn't know this was your private territory. We can negotiate. I can give you a cut of the resort. Henry didn't even blink. His voice was a lethal whisper that cut through the wind. There is nothing to negotiate. You assaulted a woman. You attempted to dump illegal toxic waste into a federally protected biosphere. You are done. He nodded to the federal marshals. Arrest them, all of them, and instruct the board to freeze every single asset connected to their shell company immediately. Vance sobbed, literally dropping to his knees in the very mud he had just tried to poison, begging for a second chance as the cold steel cuffs clicked around his wrists. Maya watched in absolute stunned silence as the entire fleet of bulldozers was impounded, and the ruthless bullies were dragged away crying like cowards. Henry turned back to Maya. The cold, ruthless billionaire vanished in an instant, replaced by the gentle, grateful father she had rescued from the raging storm. He reached down, offering his warm hand, and gently pulled her up from the mud. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" she whispered, wiping a smudge of dirt from her tired cheek, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. "Because I needed to see who was truly guarding this bay when they thought no one with any power was watching, Henry replied softly, his eyes full of profound respect. He signaled his attorney, who handed Maya a thick gold-embossed envelope. Inside was a master deed to the entire coastal bay, completely paid off, legally registered as a federally protected sanctuary, and it was strictly in her name. You told me someone has to protect the nursery. Now you have the unlimited resources to do it forever. Fast forward 6 months, the bay was completely unrecognizable. The water was crystal clear. The replanted mangroves were thriving beautifully, and the local fishing community had returned to a prosperous, sustainable life. Maya was standing on her new sturdy wooden dock at dawn, watching the vibrant, breathtaking colors of the sunrise reflect off the calm water. Henry walked up softly behind her, holding little Lily's hand. He didn't just come to check on his ecological investment. He gently dropped to one knee on the wooden planks, pulling out a small, stunningly simple ring made of woven sea glass and silver. You didn't just save my life and my daughter's life that day, Maya, Henry said, his voice thick with genuine emotion. You saved my faith in humanity. Will you let us be your family? Tears streamed down Maya's face, not from the pain of endurance, but from a deep, overwhelming joy she never thought she would experience. She pulled him up and held him tight as Lily cheered happily beside them, wrapping her small arms around Maya's legs. The seeds of life, when planted with a courageous and righteous fire, will always grow to cast a protective, beautiful shadow over our entire lives, guiding us safely to the shores of absolute freedom and happiness. If this beautiful ending touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel to warm your soul every day. And don't forget to leave our final prayer in the comments to bless their beautiful new family. I believe the ocean of justice always washes away all injustice and brings peace to the righteous.